Hello, everyone. I'm Ananda, the Galactic Mystic, and this is Navigational Astrology. Welcome to your Pisces full moon forecast. This full moon is occurring on September 10th, 2022. Let's get into it. Welcome, beautiful mystics. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, big hugs to my subscriber family. On this channel, I talk about astrology, mysticism, folk magic, working with the natural cycles of life, growing our consciousness, and having beautiful, conscious relationships. I'm just going to get right into this, and I'm going to pull up the chart so you can see what I see as we are talking about this. Okay, so September 10th, 2022 at 5:58 a.m. This is Eastern Standard Time. So here is our full moon at 17 degrees and 41 minutes of Pisces. Here is our sun moon opposition. Every full moon is a sun moon opposition. This full moon is conjunct Neptune by 7 degrees. It's a little wide, but still noteworthy, and very closely conjunct Asteroid Juno. This is our asteroid of commitment. So, first and foremost, let's pause and zoom out a little bit. We had a Pisces new moon on March 22nd earlier this year. And Pisces, as the last zodiac sign of the zodiac, naturally represents endings. It represents other things as well, but that new moon that we had earlier this year, I called that new moon the moon of karmic endings. And it may be a little strange because we think of new moons as new beginnings and full moons as completions or endings. But I very clearly saw that new moon as the beginning of an ending cycle. So when we have a new moon in any sign, it's actually beginning a year, an approximately year-long journey with that sign. And yes, we have the smaller cycle of the lunar cycle we are in that lasts, 28 days. But if we zoom out and view this as a larger cycle, that new moon in Pisces represented the beginning of a year-long cycle of karmic endings. Now, the cycle will complete with our next new moon in Pisces and begin again. And while, yes, Pisces will always represent endings in some way, each lunation has its own flavor. So that the next cycle may not be as infused with this energy of karmic endings as this one is. But it still will be to some degree because it's Pisces. But I digress. So this full moon in Pisces is the peak, the grand finale of some things in our lives that have been changing drastically for the last 6 months. Now, from this full moon until that next new moon next year, and I think it's in February, that will represent the second half of the lunar cycle if we were looking at it in a monthly sort of lens. That's the winding down and the integration. So from the March new moon until this full moon in Pisces, this has been a growing experience of things completing in our lives, falling away, things that are no longer for us. We're using discernment. We're snapping out of our illusions and delusions, represented here by Neptune. Now, that new moon we had in March, the moon of karmic endings, I will put the link for the video for that in the description box below. It's always a good idea to look back when we're looking at these larger cycles. That new moon had a lot to say. And I think if you go back and listen to that, you will be surprised by this point of retrospect that we now have. So this is likely going to feel like a very emotional full moon. And that's very much in alignment with what it is like to experience big endings. And often the experience of an ending feels scary to our minds, but in truth, endings and new beginnings are basically, they're very similar. They cannot be separated. We cannot have new beginnings without proper endings. And this is this divine sacred cycle of life, death, and rebirth that we experience over and over again as a soul, as a human. These cycles permeate everything that we do. Cycles within cycles. So this full moon has a lot to do with our relationships and what we are committed to with Juno here. Juno is often called the asteroid of marriage, but in truth, she represents a lot more than that. She is not just about our marriage partner. She is about our commitments and all of the things that we are committed to, which is quite varied and goes way beyond our marriage partner. We have belief systems we are committed to. We have work obligations we are committed to. We have roles as parent, sister, son, lawyer, police officer. All of these roles that we play are commitments that we have taken on. And some of these commitments are now coming to an end, or their iteration is coming to an end so that a new beginning can happen within a commitment. And this is really good stuff. Now, Mercury has recently gone retrograde. So we are in our cycle of revising, redoing, rethinking. And that's a gift. It's a gift to be able to go back and rethink something. Now, of course, we don't like having to do that in the moment, but Mercury retrograde is an incredibly intuitive time. I wrote an article called The Deep Magic of Mercury Retrograde. That is also in the box below. Check that out for a little bit of a different perspective on Mercury retrograde. Now, our rulers of Pisces, we have Neptune here involved with this full moon. And then we have Jupiter here in Aries, who is retrograde. Now, Jupiter has been pulling he's been doing a lot for us lately. And sometimes it's like, Jupiter, you do too much, honey. You're doing too much. But that's how Jupiter is. Jupiter likes to do too much. So residing with him in Aries is Chiron here. And we have this gorgeous finger of God aspect pattern with the apex at Chiron. We have a boomerang with Mercury retrograde. And then here is our base sextile with the sun in the south node. So basically, in this experience of a peak of karmic endings and reevaluating our commitments and allowing our commitments to be reborn into a new expression, a big part of this is going to be reevaluating what it means to allow ourselves to exist as we are. Allowing ourselves to want what we want. This is really just, just to simplify it, shadow work. This is shadow work. And shadow work means to shine the light of love and acceptance into all of those dark, scary corners within ourselves and to not reject anything that we find, to embrace all of ourselves, to not require that we exist as a fractured being. Chiron and Aries wants to be healed as a whole being, wanting what he wants, being who he is, existing as he is, which of course includes evolving and growing as we all do. But when we reject ourselves, parts of ourselves, or project parts of ourselves onto others, we're not allowing ourselves to be whole. Now, one of the biggest things about shadow work is owning our feelings. Now, I used to think that owning our emotions or owning our feelings simply meant to not deny our feelings or not deny how we felt. But in truth, there's a much deeper aspect to this that is a little bit more challenging. And that is to not to own our feelings means to own them, to keep them where they belong, rather than projecting them onto someone else. Now, Mars is, of course, doing his whole journey through Gemini for 7 months. He is in his pre-retrograde shadow at this point. And for this full moon, he is activating the Aldebaran and Antares axis of the high heart. He is conjunct Aldebaran here, the star of illumination, and he is opposing Antares down here, the heart of the Scorpion. Now, this axis, the stars Aldebaran and Antares are forever locked in an axis with one another. And together they represent the high heart, which is, yes, it's sort of like an extra chakra, but it's also this concept of lessening the division between our heads and our heart and allowing our minds to be informed by heart wisdom and allowing our hearts to be informed by mind wisdom. You can also think of this as uniting the hemispheres of the brain. And this is very much connected with the work of recognizing duality as a concept and not so much as truth. So whenever I want to get in touch or activate my high heart or sort of just get it going, if it feels like I need some of that balance, I just tap on it. And its location is in between the throat chakra and the heart chakra. So it's a little bit above your heart chakra. And I just tap on it or rub it in a circle and visualize my mind and my heart being beautiful, close friends who hold hands and have picnics. And, they really like each other and they are not at odds with one another in the way that our dominant culture likes them to be. We don't like that. We don't want to be at odds with one another in that way. Not shown on this chart is the asteroid Centaur Nessus is also conjunct this full moon. And Nessus, he he has a pretty bad reputation as an asteroid and as like a mythological dude. Um, and to be fair, he was a rapist and he did some really, really horrible things. But in the lesson or that he brings to us is the lesson about the difference in what we want and what we need. He represents a kind of compulsive, insatiable nature and the type of nature that just takes what it wants to fill that empty hole within. As we are allowing endings to occur so that new beginnings can occur, we're reevaluating our commitments, we're feeling all of our emotions, we're letting ourselves own everything that we feel. We're not projecting it onto other people. We're keeping our heads and our hearts communicating with one another. As we are doing this, issues of what we want versus what we need may come up. And now, you know how you see this usually happens with kids where they really want a certain toy. They really want it for Christmas. They're so excited to get it. They're obsessing about it and they're thinking about it. And then Christmas morning, they get it and they play with it for 10 minutes and then they put it down and never look at it again. That sort of cycle of wanting and then that experience of the having being empty is a lot of what Nessus is speaking to us about here. So let's just keep that in mind. A big part of this also involving wanting versus needing is separating what society tells us that we should want or what we need versus what we actually want and need. The time of being totally informed by our dominant culture is at an end, my friend. It's time to put that behind us and to begin this journey of walking in a more wise way, informed by our head and heart balance. What society tells us we need, is largely dependent on who wants our money at any particular point in time. So, with that type of deep wisdom in mind, I'm just going to mention one last aspect, and that is that our Pluto retrograde here is in a septile, a very tight septile with this full moon. And a septile is what we get when we divide a circle by 7. And what we actually get is a number that goes on and on to an infinity. So this aspect is a wisdom breakout kind of energy. It is wisdom seeking. And with Pluto, this is a beautiful opportunity to be utterly transformed by wisdom. And everything that I've said is part of that. Allowing these endings and new beginnings, reevaluating our commitments, feeling our feelings, shadow work, letting ourselves be who we are, balancing the head and heart. Much love. Happy full moon. I hope that you are just having a really beautiful experience in your life right now. Let me know how you are. Thank you for liking and subscribing. I will see you very soon.